Thanks for tuning in to the Diaphragm Dynasty. I'm back with another topic or another discussion about R&B songwriters or music songwriters, because these artists, I don't want to just put them to R&B. They write for pop artists too and other genres that we probably don't even know about, but very talented songwriters. But the other day I was thinking about who is the better songwriter. And as I always talk about, when I talk about better, we have to break it down to a topic or a subgenre or a focus, because better is so loose and not specific enough. But I was thinking about who's the better songwriter in terms of quality, because we know who's the better songwriter as far as quantity goes. The Dream has been writing countless hits for other people. He's basically Beyonce's right hand writer at this point. His name is all over the Beyonce album credits. And Neo has been more selective over the last decade or so. So quantity wise, the Dream is out there as far as quantity goes, because he can make hits at such a high rate. But is his quality the same as Neo's? And that's what the discussion is, because this makes a difficult discussion for me, because these are two of my five best songwriters ever, in my opinion, other than Babyface and probably Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam, writers like that, who's had a long history of writing. Tank, for example, is in my top. So there's a lot of songwriters that's in my top 10. But these two artists are probably in my top five for sure. They're definitely in my top 10 of my all-time songwriters, um, that we know of, at least. But these artists contributed so much to the music business, especially around the time that I started listening to music, around 2000, early 2000s, when I started paying attention to the writing credits. And back when you used to buy CDs and you would look at the booklets and you would see who wrote this song and look at the lyrics and look at the thank yous, which unfortunately we don't have anymore because everything is streaming and everything is online. You still have access to it, but it's just a different feel to it. But these songwriters have been ripping up the stuff for a long time. Even before I was listening to music, or before I can probably listen to music, they were already getting influenced and already starting the process. So there's no disrespect to any of these songwriters, because they're so great and they do a great job of what they do. But Neo has been active as the Dream, but I like Neo's quality. Some of the songs that he gave us, "Let Me Love You," um, the songs that he wrote for Rihanna, like "Unfaithful" and "Hate That I Love You." Uh, so many songs, even the songs that he's written for himself, like "So Sick." That first project that he released, his debut album, it was basically a greatest hits for him. Because if you put all his songs together over his first, of his career, the first two CDs probably had majority of the songs on it, and most songs came from that debut album, which I covered before on the Diaphragm Dynasty here. But even songs like "That Girl" with Marcus Houston is an underrated song, because Marcus Houston is not as big of an artist as Neo is, or any of these other artists. But if you listen to the lyrics on that song, it was classic Neo writing, very high quality of writing, production as well, which he was doing with several other people. Um, but Neo, I think, separated himself from writers when he wrote "Irreplaceable," and to hear the lyrics of that song and say, "Wow, a man wrote that song," it was just mind blowing to me, because he can write from a perspective of a woman, um, but not necessarily go through those things. And he talked about this before in the interview, and he said he talked to women, and when he talks to women, he gets inspired to write these songs. So that is such a unique perspective to be able to have, and that's the true essence of a writer, to being able to write from perspective that you might not necessarily know about, but you still have the privilege and the storytelling ability to do so. And that's why I think these great songwriters like a Neo, The Dream, Babyface, they could be good movie writers or good TV show writers, because they can write from perspective they know anything about. You can just tell them what the story is and they can put a storyline together. And that's what these great songwriters are. Great songwriters are great storytellers. And that's no exception to Neo or The Dream or Babyface or Tank or any other of those guys. So But I do think Neo does have an underrated discography, even though he does give a lot of credit for the songwriting he's done. But I talked about it before that Rihanna Unfaithful record is so underrated. That Marcus Houston, That Girl song is so underrated. Um, Take a Bow. Well, it's not underrated, but it doesn't get talked about enough as much. And So Sick as well, because that was his debut album. But it definitely should go in there in the top 100 songs of all time in the genre. And don't get me wrong, now, the Dream has timeless records too. He has a timeless record with the Umbrella record with Rihanna and Jay Z. That record still gets plays from different demos all across the board. So I don't think necessarily Neil has one of those type hits where they're played all across the board. Maybe the Rihanna, uh, maybe one of the Rihanna songs are, but I really can't think of a Neil song that's played across the board like Umbrella is. Umbrella is one of those undeniable hits that even the other demos can't deny. So it's always great to have that. Or Beyonce Love on Top, which is one of my favorite Beyonce songs. But I think Neil is just more intricate and more meticulous with his writing, and his process is just insane. And I think that's why he doesn't put out a high quality quantity like the Dream does, but nevertheless, he still give us that high quality. So I think that's why Neo is. So Neo is more like a Jay Z, and the Dream is more like a Nas, because it just takes so much out of these artists that are very meticulous like that. And I'm a Nas fan, but I think he's meticulous, but not to the level of Jay Z is. I think Jay Z has to have a certain producer. He has to be in a certain mode. He has to be in a certain mood to do all these things. And I think Nas is just like, all right, I can just go because this is what I love to do. This is my passion. I just want to get my thoughts out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. I don't have to feel the best. On the other hand, you have a Jay Z or a Neo who has to be, the vibe has to be right. Everything has to be right or to their liking for the stuff to go ahead. But if we want to have to nitpick, which we do in these better comparisons, I have to pick Neo as far as quality goes because he just doesn't put out a lot either. Similar to, I hate to bring it up, but a Kendrick and a Drake. Kendrick has way better quality because he doesn't produce as much, but Drake has the quantity because he's producing every year. He's on these different features. But I do appreciate the artists that are more selective because we don't get trash and we don't get a bunch of filler songs. We get a lot of timeless music and music that we can listen to, 10, 20 years down the road. But tell me who your thoughts are, who are the better artists between Neo and a Dream. And until next time, I'll see you next time.